I would like to invite Scott Lawler to share a little bit about himself, what inspires him to do the music for this series. He is the one that I'm passing the recordings to, and he's composing day by day, right on the spot, an amazing backdrop to each of the meditations so that if you wish to use them for a longer period of time, you have the composition that he felt inspired to put behind the words. So, Scott, take it away.
These these compositions that I write, I just sit down at the keyboard when I get the meditations, and I just start composing whatever comes to mind as I'm listening to the meditation.
Well, we're super grateful for you. Just share with us for a moment what took you down the path of composing music. Your music is definitely quite expansive and inspirational.
Well, I've been writing music for a long time, since 2013, and I've always been interested in music since I was a kid. And I was inspired by a lot of different ambient artists. So I just started writing and releasing my music. And last year I wrote an album inspired by your Advent meditations. And I think you had reached out to me earlier, a couple of weeks ago, and asked me to do the music for this year, if I remember right. And I just thought it would be a good match, a good pairing of two creative minds working together to create something really unique. So I hope that you guys have been enjoying the music that I've been writing for these meditations, and I hope to continue with the project. And the first set of them has already been released on Bandcamp on Friday, and I guess the set's done pretty well so far, so that's always an added bonus.
That is great. So you can learn more about Scott's music by going to Bandcamp. You'll see at the end of every recording, I do it in video form so that you can get website links at the end. And at the end, you can see the way to follow Scott, to learn more about his music, to download some of his music for your enjoyment in other ways over and above the Advent series. So thank you so much, Scott. Thank you. We really, really I really appreciate you. It's nice to get to know you.
Oh, by the way, if anyone would like a free code to last year's album that I wrote for the meditations, it's an album called Theotokos. I don't know how to pronounce it. Just send me a message through Bandcamp and I'll get you a copy.
Right. I was so blessed that Scott spontaneously took that on, and I was passing his music through Facebook and other channels, and that's laid the foundation for what we're doing here. So Theotokos, which means God bearer, and we're all called to be God bearers. The word is commonly used for Mary, but I think it's done so that it can be a pointer to how each one of us is a Theotokos as we ascend more and more to our divine nature. Thank you, Scott. That was awesome.
Well, thanks, and I apologize for bumbling around a little bit, but I'm gonna go get some coffee, and I'll get the meditation in the mail and get the music done for it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. I just wanted to give the chance for everyone to meet Scott, who has so graciously been desiring to collaborate and bring his gift of music to the gift that I offer here. So today's topic, fullness. We have, as you can see, I lit my second Advent candle, so it's the second Sunday in Advent. It's 2 purple candles. Next week, the third will be the pink, and we'll get into that on next Sunday's topic. Fullness came to me for a couple reasons. The first reason was because Friday was about emptiness. And oftentimes, in our parlance, we poise those as opposites: emptiness and fullness, emptiness and fullness. And yet it is a coupling of words, divine words, if you will, that when we open up to them, we find there's quite a paradoxical nature. Paradox is when you have something that seems to be a contradiction, and yet it's more compatible than what you may first realize when you reflect upon it. So I thought fullness would be a perfect topic. Secondly, the Sundays in Advent in the season are always bursting with much more joy. They're bursting with much more of a fleshing out, if you will. We have in scriptures in the Bible, the Word was made flesh. And fullness connotes the Word coming to its fullness in the flesh, in all creation, because flesh is one way of referring to creation. We have our flesh, which makes us a living word coming into fullness, and we have the flesh of all things, the sensibility, the sensuality of all things. So I'd like to invite you today, since this theme for the entire series is reflecting on the notion of divine word, to let fullness be your theme today, and let yourself come to a new place around this notion of fullness that breaks open a certain ineffable quality or essential quality. There again, we have another paradox. When you read about what an essence is the nature of something. So when we speak about our essence, it's what we are in the immaterial sense, but at the core root of who or what we are. And at the same time, that essence has an ineffable quality, which means it's a boundless quality. So essence has a certain containment to it, a certain structure to it. And ineffable has a boundlessness quality. So coming to the essential nature and the ineffable nature of something, while paradoxical, leads us closer to the reality of what it is. When you think about the word fullness, what do you think about? What other words come to your mind or to your heart? And when you think about being in the fullness, being the fullness, abiding in the fullness, how might you speak to that state, state of being? These are just reflections that you can have. How might you think of that state of being when you think of fullness? I know what always comes to my heart and mind is a certain effortless completeness, a paradox of being completely free and solid, and at the same time having a boundlessness, a union with all things, where there's a loss of self into all things, into God and the Godness of all things, and at the same time a coming to be myself even more fully. Those are some of the ways I might speak to it. There are many words. In fact, I took a little bit of time to pull up some words through a thesaurus. And I want to just say those words before we get into the notion of fullness when we talk about spiritual realization. Fullness seems most commonly to refer to a state of something. Other words that have a similarity would be saturation, completion, plenty, aggregate, amplitude, breadth, completeness, entirety, perfection, plenitude, plenum, plumpness, satiety, and scope. And I'd like to hone in on the word plenum. Plenum, which comes from the Latin, literally means a space completely filled with matter. The whole space is regarded as full, a space filled with matter. So if we're going to refer to fullness as being plenum or plenus, plenty, there's many derivations of it that have come into the English language. It means that the idea of space, which is really part of this third dimension, is filled with matter. So rather than being empty of matter, being only formless, the formless fills the space so much that the matter is filled with the formless. I hope that that doesn't feel like mental gymnastics, but it lays the groundwork for what I'd like to invite you to today when we're reflecting upon being the fullness of the divine word, or any way you want to take fullness. The way we come into fullness, or at least one way, is to come close, so close to reality that we are absorbed into the flow itself. Popularly today, meditation is seen as a technique of moving into reality, of coming into a self-realization that we realize the fullness of our state of being. And interestingly enough, in the cultivation of meditation practice, which helps us create a gap between ourselves and the limited ways we associate with ourselves in life. So it creates a gap. What can oftentimes be a pitfall is as the separation increases, we become very strong in what is the observer self or the witness self, and then create the mistake, the patterning that sets a stance as the observer self that moves us away from fullness. So the initial motive is that with meditation, we create a gap between the way we identify with things and the way things truly are. And in that gap, we are able to have the direct experience, which 100% leads to the experience of fullness. But in our limited self, we will then oftentimes identify very quickly with the observer self. And this is most often happen in our cognitive patterns, in our thinking mind. We become experts at observing, analyzing, and thinking about our experience. But in doing so, we separate in a way that disconnects us from the fullness of life. Well, that can lead to a feeling of discouragement, right? A throwing up of our hands of, well, what is the way? How can I come into fullness? And I say to you in greatest simplicity, come close. Open yourself, not to it, but to self. Stay faithful again and again and again to yourself. Move. Each time you notice that you separate and create a stance, move back into the opening of self, directly into the experience. Jesus said, I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. We come into that fullness, into that plenum. We fill the space. We fill the space, not from an ego stance, but from the complete loss of self as we come close. So our meditation this morning is going to be quite simply a coming close. When we are the fullness of life, we become completely permeable without ever losing our inner stability. You know that you are absorbed in the flow when you have no stance, and yet you are completely undaunted and unshakable. It doesn't mean that you are void of emotional response. It doesn't mean that you are absent of thoughts. It means that your emotion and your thoughts and every movement that makes up you, your imagination, your will, your memory, that everything is absorbed and harnessed into this fullness of life. You become fully alive in your mind, in your heart, in your memory, in your will, in your imagination. They become alive. They reinforce the experience of being fully alive in this very moment. And in that, you are touchable. You are moved. You are moved by the word that a tree speaks just by being right outside your window. I was sitting in a moment of fullness yesterday in my home, and for a little period of time was absorbed into the sensations of the light coming through the slats in one of the blinds hitting the floor, the aliveness of the mantelpiece that seems quite static because it's only a piece of wood, the sound that I had coming out of my computer, the sensation of holding the pen in my hand as I sat to write, the feeling of the felt cushion that supported my back, the sensation of the air that was neither heavy nor light around me. It was a moment of fullness that my mind only reflected upon in the way I'm speaking now afterwards. Stepping into our fullness, we will experience the greatest desolation and the greatest celebration. It does not protect us from the impermanence of life, but rather places us right in the heart of the ever-changing quality of life. And we are moved by it. We are touched by it. We are available fully for our life as it happens. And we become aware that each moment is a call. We awaken to each moment being a call of the beloved. This state, I would say, is a state of wisdom. And in chapter 7, in the Hebrew text, we have a definition, a description of this wisdom. For in her is a spirit intelligent, holy, unique, manifold, subtle, agile, clear, unstained, certain, firm, secure, tranquil, all powerful, all seeing, and pervading all spirits. She is mobile beyond all motion. She penetrates and pervades all things by reason of her purity. Wisdom is the aura of the might of God and the pure effusion of the glory of the Almighty. This is your call. This is part of your essential nature, part of the innocence and purity that you are becoming. And the path is simple. Come close. Come close again. Come close again. So let's move into meditation. This will be a combination of a guidance and a mantra. I love the mantra Om Mane Padme Hum. The jewel of consciousness reaches the heart of the lotus. And there are many meanings, and it seems to be a mantra that is a part of almost all ancient cultures and seems to have many different meanings, but all of them hit upon the embodiment of the fullness of consciousness. So I'm going to draw your attention to coming close to one part of yourself, and then we'll move into 2 tonings of that mantra. And instead of teaching you, I'm simply going to invite you to do it with me, and you'll pick it up. So the words are Om Mane Padme Hum. I invite you to close your eyes. Today's divine word of fullness is an unceasing invitation. And I invite you then to come close with your inward gaze. Come close and direct the gaze to your physical eyes sitting in your head in their sockets. Come close in the silence to the sensation of your eyes. And we tone. Om Mane Padme Hum. Om Mane Padme Hum. Come close to the silence after the chant. Bring the inward gaze to the lips and notice how they rest upon each other. And come close to the sounding of the mantra. Om Mane Padme Hum. Om Mane Padme Hum. Come close to the shoulders, your shoulders. Let the gaze be absorbed into your two shoulders without thought, sentiment. Just awake to the experience of your shoulders. And come close to the sounding of the mantra. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Come close to your elbows. Let the inward gaze fall upon this part of your body. And come close to the sounding of the mantra. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. And come close to the hands, wherever the hands might be sitting right now. Relax into an awareness of the hands. If you can, even become absorbed into the hands. Let that awareness be your state of being. And come close to the mantra. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Come close to the belly. Bring an inward gaze and smile into the abdomen. Open yourself in such a way that you lose a sense of separation. And come close to the mantra. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Bring the inward gaze into the thighs. And return again to the mantra. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. And move your gaze into the feet. Notice how they are right now. And then after noticing, let go and just come close. Let this be a practice. Remember that if your eye is pure, your whole body will be filled with light. And we return to the mantra. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. There is a passage in the Psalms that is a compelling invitation of the divine. Turn to me and be saved. This is the turning, the coming close to self that results in a salvation in the moment, leading you into the fullness of your life. I end with this song that comes from another psalm. One thing I ask, this alone I seek, to dwell in the house of the Lord all my days. For one day within your temple heals every day alone. O Lord, lead me to your dwelling. Remember today that you are that temple. And you don't have to stand outside the doors of the temple. Walk right in. Walk right in. In a moment of fullness, these words came forward. Swells of luminous rainbow-like arches lift my feet into the air, brushing the tips of grassy blades, swaying in the wind of the spirited surge, like a dance of heaven and earth. Life urges, life surges, and I ride the wave, dense, subtle, indescribably bursting with a cacophonous utterance, pushed and pulled from the fiber of my being, the fibers of created. You are my life. I am this life. We are. Who else can I possibly thank? There is only you, always you. Thank you. Thank you for joining me. Wonderful as always to be with you. I hope you have a fantastic day that is replete with fullness. Blessings, everybody.